He wanted, like so many of us do, to keep women safe from sexual assault, from trauma, and from fear. But what many men don't know is that it's not what kind of clothing a woman's body wears that has anything to do with it. It's what a woman's body is that causes all of these troubles. Bodies full of desire, desiring bodies of curves and straight lines and freckles and hair. Bodies of skin and fat and muscle and bone. Bodies of organs, of hearts and brains and cervixes. What I love every day is that I can wake up and say that I was born with the one body part whose use is only pleasure. Anyone know which one that is? Yes, the clitoris. But if you think about it, which parts of us aren't? Brains, hair, hands, heads, breasts, legs, feet, elbows. The skin itself is about pleasure. Freud had this theory, the polymorphous perverse, meaning that we're all born, we're so awash in the pleasure of having a body that every touch, every breeze brings us rolling waves of pleasure, and that the process of getting older and more mature is learning how to move some of that sensitivity to a few precious locations, mostly so, as he figured it, we were going to get anything done at all. And so our nerves, so adept at finding pleasure, became located in our nipples and tongues, our fingers and toes, the backs of our knees and the backs of our necks, our lips, both sets of lips, and of course in our genitals too. And somehow we managed to stop touching ourselves long enough to write books and build buildings and form universities. But women are a kind of warm, breathing repository of all that pleasure, and it's hard not to see, especially not in spring. Our sexual selves come out of a hiding in the spring, and so our clothes come off, even here in Wisconsin, where spring and warm are not always the same thing. Because we feel the joy of having bodies, of desiring and being desired. What makes me sad about having to have a slut walk at all is that people don't realize that if everyone felt free, truly free to desire what they wanted and to be touched the way they wanted, a hell of a lot more of us would. Sex is good for your health, it's good for your immune system, it's good for love and communication and even digestion. Really, look it up. But still, people persist, seeing other people and deciding that somehow taking is better than asking, that forcing is better than being given, and that the whole beauty of sex is how much more joyful, how much hotter, how much more amazing it is when it's given freely. You don't have to be in love, you don't have to be committed or married, you don't have to have a goal, not even the goal of an orgasm. You just have to have your body, feel your body, and know that your being near another body is what makes us human and alive. And so for the reasons we do, we load all this anger and frustration and hate onto women's bodies because they've become for us symptomatic of our unhappiness, our disconnect from our humanity. They have become objects to control, to vilify, to condemn, and to judge. I've known people who were so terribly sexually assaulted you can't believe they lived through it. Many didn't want to. I've known people so lonely that they steeped themselves in self-loathing and shame. I have known people raised to believe that every physical pleasure is a test of will. I have known people ashamed of the bodies they were given, the bodies they became, the bodies they made or grew into. They hated their hands or their genitals, their hairiness or their baldness, their fatness or muscularity, and even, especially sometimes, their skinniness. They hate their age or their youth, they hate their virginity or their worlds of sexual experience. But what we all have in common is shame, and all the shame is slut-shaming. And all slut-shaming is about controlling people into believing that their bodies, which are full of pleasure, are wrong. There are objections to having a slut walk and to trying to reclaim the term slut in the first place. For plenty of women of color, in particular, the agency of using the term in an empowering way is simply too mired in a history of the ownership of black women's bodies and the way those bodies have been used, bought, sold, brutalized, represented, negotiated, and are so categorically different from the way white women's that they sometimes cannot participate. The same is true for women who do some kinds of sex work. For trans women of color who work the street, slut is often only an overture to the kinds of violence I hear about on a daily basis. For some older women, slut just hurts too much and always will, just like queer does for older same-sex lovers, or the N-word is for older folks of color, for whom it was also just a preamble, a word that came before horrible, horrific violence. On a personal note, I'm turning 43 today, I realized that I had to say out loud, ladies, shave your heads. Don't wear heels sometimes. Enjoy food. If you only ever feel beautiful in a full face of makeup or in this year's style, stop wearing makeup for a while. Find not just the beauty that they tell you you should be, but be the beauty that you are. We are all of us too caught up in a culture that inundates us with how we should look, could look, ought to look. We know we can buy beauty, but don't. Find it. Find ways to feel beautiful on days that you're not feeling it. Fuck women's magazines and their message that none of us are trying hard enough to be pretty enough, or skinny enough, or sexy enough. Which is why when that cop said that women are wrong for dressing the way we do, so many of us spontaneously said our bodies are not the problem. We know our bodies are right. Our sexualities are right. We know that we deserve to decide how we dress and who gets to touch us, and that the only people who should feel shamed are the people who want to force others through fear or violence into doing things that they did not choose to do. We get to be strong, and we get to be careful, and we get to be beautiful, because our bodies and our sexualities are all those things. Prove over and over again, whether it's through professional sports or wars overseas, that taking what you want is how the game is won. We don't need a rape culture that keeps women fearing for themselves. We don't need protection. We need people to understand that no means no, and it always means no, no matter when it's spoken or whispered or screamed. We need people to know that silence or drunkenness is not consent. We need people and legal systems and cultures to understand that rape is about power only, and has nothing to do with the beautiful sexualities our bodies express. Rape, violence, sexual harassment, sexual assault, all of these are about taking away someone else's choice, their power, and their beauty. They all say, you are not yours, you are mine. But you know what? We are ours. Our bodies are ours, our desires, straight, kinky, queer, asexual, vanilla, autosexual, poly, monogamous, are ours. We get to pick who touches us and why and when. We get to be in charge of who shares our beauty, of who touches our souls, our arms, our breasts, our genitals. We do. So the only choice in a culture where people are free is the choice to keep your hands to yourself. The choice is to ask for consent, not take. The choice to respect our own desires and everyone else's. And the choices of what we wear, to school, to clubs, to church, to the beach, is not an important part of that equation. The only choice anyone has to make every day is to not choose force, shame, rape, violence, intimidation, harassment, or threat. We will wear what we want, and we will be beautiful and powerful, and insist that anyone who cannot see that and who does not respect it has no place in our world. So walk today with joy and pleasure. Feel the swivel of your hips and the pain in your heels and the pinch of your toe in your shoe. Walk with power and beauty and love. Walk, sluts, be powerful and beautiful and all the other things that violence and shame and the world tells you that you aren't. Go slut walk.